Welcome to 100 Huntley.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
You are
it.
a detective. You know, I see detectives on TV, but I forget sometimes that they exist in real life. You're a real detective.
And it's probably not as much fun as it looks like on TV. I've kind of learned that it's a little less glamorous.
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes it's like long, extended periods of boredom punctuated by moments of terror and excitement.
I don't watch, CSI or those kinds of shows, but so many people do, and there's become a whole culture around that sort of thing. What is your take on those shows?
Well, I mean, it's hard for us who do it professionally to watch it just because you're always in it anyway. Would you really want to go off duty and watch the thing you've been doing all week? Probably not. But also there's a certain element of fiction that makes it hard to watch. So wave the wand through the air and collect the DNA trail. There's lots of things that you might see on TV that you just are not able to do in real life.
Really?
And so we want to kind of answer those questions for jurors, right? So they don't think, were we doing a good job? But of course, I'm working cold cases.
Yeah.
So a lot of my cases are unsolved murders from the 70s and 80s. And in those days, we didn't have the kind of technology we had today, so there's a lower expectation.
Since you bring this up, I'd like to ask you about Jimmy Hoffa. What is the latest on him?
I have to tell you, but I can't tell you because, you
Can't tell me.
It's,
all right. Well, off camera, can you tell me?
Yeah, of course.
Because you know where he is. I know you do.
Well, of course.
I know you do. Okay. This has brought you, your solving cold cases led you into something which I could hardly believe this. I mean, you've written a book called Cold Case Christianity. Is that the title?
Right.
By J. Warner Wallace. Check it out. And it's a crazy idea. I mean, I want to hear you tell us what is this book about, or tell us how you came. You know, I guess you were an atheist, and then something happened. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, a lot of it just traces my own personal journey through this. I was a pretty committed atheist. I was kind of an obstinate atheist until I was about 35.
Are there any other kind?
Of course.
Oh, come on.
And I think my dad, for example, is a very dispassionate atheist. Okay. And he would say, hey, you were the angry one. I'm not angry about anything. And that's probably
Doesn't that make
true.
him an agnostic?
Well, in some sense, I think he's pretty committed to his beliefs.
All right. Well, that's, yeah.
So what's interesting about it, though, is I was somebody who was really evidentially based. I mean, think about law enforcement in general. We're making cases constantly based on evidence. And now, when I first got interested in the case for Christianity, really it was because I was interested in the person of Jesus, not as God. Just wanted to kind of mine out the red letters to see what kind of ancient wisdom, like any other ancient sage. I don't care if it's Baha'u'llah, if it's Buddha, I don't care who it is.
Well, that's very intellectually honest of you. I think a lot of people who are committed atheists wouldn't even lean in the direction of looking into the wisdom of Jesus, because I think if you're intellectually honest, you have to admit that even if you don't believe he's God or anything like that, or the Messiah rose from the dead, that the wisdom is amazing. And that's one of C.S. Lewis's, I'm sure you're familiar with C.S. Lewis's case, that you can say what you want, but you do realize that this man had tremendous wisdom.
Absolutely.
And would somebody with this tremendous wisdom claim to be God? I mean, if you're insane, you might claim to be God, or if you're a liar, you might claim to be God, but he has this wisdom. But so is that your first way in was you had some spiritual desire to learn the wisdom?
It really wasn't a spiritual desire. The first time I ever walked into an evangelical church and heard the pastor kind of talk about he pitched Jesus as this wise ancient sage who might have some good advice for you that's been time vetted from the ages.
2,000 years worth of vetting.
And it still works today. Why don't you check it out? The problem, of course, is that in order to do that, you have to kind of go through the red letters are embedded in an historical account in the Gospels.
Before you even say this, I want to know, what was an atheist doing in an evangelical church? What happened?
My wife was the kind of person who kind of grew up as a kind of a cultural Christian, really not really aware of what all this entailed, or even the principles or doctrines of what Christianity presented. And I was more than willing to go with her to church as an atheist.
Okay.
I just seen my father do that for years.
Sure.
So I was more than willing to go as kind of a utilitarian act to pacify my wife.
Okay, so you're there as a good husband.
Sure.
Your interest is piqued, and you begin reading the words of Jesus embedded in this New Testament narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I tell you, that was, for me, it opened up my eyes to a couple of things, because by this time I had already started working investigations where I commonly have more than one eyewitness reporting the same event. Cold cases are events in the distant past. Mine are about 30, 35 years old. No living eyewitnesses who can tell you I saw that guy who did it. If we had that, that wouldn't be a cold case. Now, of course, the problem is, as these things get older, is that our witnesses die.
Right.
And there's a different kind of skill set you use, because here's what happens. A detective writes down the interview that he did in 1960.
Yeah.
Well, now it turns out that that witness is dead, and so is the detective.
Right.
So now I've got an account written from 40 years ago that I've got to evaluate with a certain skill set. So what the book tries to do is give you 10 skills that we use every day and then apply them to the New Testament accounts to see if these would hold up as reliable eyewitnesses, given the standard we typically use in court. And we have a certain standard. In California, we have 12 or 14 questions that we allow jurors to think about as they consider the reliability of a witness. Well, those break down into 4 major categories, and so I let those 4 major categories kind of vet through the eyewitness accounts in the Gospels. Now,
as you're doing this, at some point does the light go off and you go, uh-oh, this sounds like it maybe happened?
Yeah, here's the problem for me. There's a big liability as a detective in the eyewitness accounts that are presented in the Gospels because they contain supernatural events. And so for me, as a really committed philosophical naturalist, that was the barrier that I thought I could never jump that. So I don't care how good they look, I don't care how well they measure, they're going to be a problem because they include supernatural events. Now, but here's what I really stopped and had to ask myself, well, wait a minute. The thing that I'm investigating is whether or not something or someone supernatural could occur or exist. So that's really the focus of my examination, my investigation is about the supernatural. So therefore, I can't begin with the presupposition that nothing's supernatural. It'd be like walking into a homicide scene and deciding up front, I know what kind of suspect did this. And I've done that, by the way. And every time you do that, you end up wasting time because you've determined the end from the beginning, and that's never a good idea. So what I had to do here was suspend my disbelief, suspend my suspicion about the supernatural, and let the text tell me what's the most reasonable inference if I wasn't already biased against the supernatural.
But the intellectual honesty of that blows me away because most committed materialists, they would simply say, that's out of bounds. That's not acceptable. So you're open to that. I mean, we're running out of time here. We're going to have a web interview with you after this. But just to end our TV time together, okay, so what happens? At some point...
At some point, you get to the place where you realize, and any witness gets to this, and I don't care what kind of case it is, at some point you get to a place with a witness where you realize, wow, every way we could test this witness, they seem to be reliable. Are we now going to accept what they say about our suspect or not? And if they're reliable, we're asked, hey, if they're reliable and they pass this test, then you don't have a good reason not to accept what they're telling us. So I got to a place, maybe 6 months into this search, where I said to my wife, I said, you know, I'm pretty committed that these are I'm pretty convinced they're reliable accounts. The problem is I don't even know what the cross thing's about. What is the whole I don't get it. I don't why is it to die on a cross? And that though for me. So I had belief that this was true before I had belief in. But I had to get through belief that to get to belief in.
This is so crazy. Now, you detail this journey in the book.
In the book,
Well, since we have to close now, the book is Cold Case Christianity. Cold Case Christianity. I am absolutely fascinated that an atheist with an open mind and a background in detective work could apply that and come out where you came out. I hope people will get the book. Again, it's Cold Case Christianity. Jim, I'm thrilled to have you. If you want to hear the rest of this interview, and it's going to get crazy, come to us on the web, 100huntley.com.